For sure, the setting, I think, of the council, it's important because being, to a certain extent, a limited number of people in an informal setting help us to create the right atmosphere for an informal exchange of information on the topics we are most interested in too, which are typically information that are very difficult to find on the market or from outside in source of information, but still at the same time maintaining a degree of flexibility in how much we feel we want to disclose, and therefore to preserve the confidentiality on what we believe are competitive elements of information. But one thing that is very valuable is, of course, that you develop personal relationship with colleagues that does the same job in the other banks, which means I've been able to create a network of colleagues across Europe, which I happen to leverage also outside, the formal meetings we have at the council, and therefore even for spot questions or for spot situation in which you wanted to exchange opinions on burning topics, and I have already leveraged it in a few occasions. Therefore, the most favorite topics, of course, have been how to react to the crisis, and what are the levers in order to cope with the external pressure. Well, the first one we need to mention is credit management, which is not only addressing credit restructuring situations with our companies being in trouble, but also to find the right balance between controlling cost of risk and at the same time supporting the economies. Because if banks completely close the access to credit, that would even deteriorate the situation rather than trying to solve it. The topics that come to my mind are supporting new investments, because investment loans are now starting again. Also, of course, supporting working capital, because again, working capital with the recovery is now need financing, but also some more specific opportunities which I think company needs to capture in order to capture the growth, which are innovations. So financing the innovation would be for sure a topic, and to a certain extent also internationalization, which is normally considered a topic for corporate of medium enterprise, but I do think that especially in some countries where the economic structure is made of small companies, internationalization it could be a good opportunity also for small business companies. And actually in Italy the few small businesses that access to export markets are doing much better than the other ones in the recovery phase. My personal impression is that there is a strategic convergence. So strategic topics and some key decisions tends to get more and more the same. This is a quite young segment in terms of explicit segment management by banks, but now the know-how is developing, and I think the type of choices banks are taking are looking very similar. Of course, differentiation still exists, and execution of the strategies is what really tends to make the difference across the banks. Well, in my mind, the toughest one is the private side of entrepreneur.
Okay.
That's, I would say, it's one of the few where there is still no common decision, common thoughts on what is the best approach. There, as an exception of what I said before, you see very different situation across banks in Europe. So there are those banks that manage them totally separately. There are those banks that manage it with the same person. Those banks that manage it with the two-person connected. But there is no final paradigm on how it should work. In the next 3 to 5 years, it will be a key component where the growth will come from. In particular in Eastern European countries, but also in Western countries there are margins to contribute to the growth of the revenues in the retail banking sector.